This is Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Mark. And we welcome back Mark Bingham and Louis Michot to discuss a special project. Louis' label, Nouveau Electric, is releasing 22 albums from now through most of 2023, documenting 50 years of Mark Bingham. Mark has made a career out of people not knowing what he's doing, and he's been recording music at an astounding rate, and doesn't do it to keep it hidden. Mark and Louis talk about how they began working together and the first two albums in this unreal release schedule. Those would be Gooseneck and Mushroom Crowd. But they aren't necessarily being released in chronological order. Some are reissues of old and out-of-print albums, others are freshly recorded, and yet others are collections of odds and ends. And in the middle of all this, we end up discussing the proper pronunciation of Adele's name and what happened to Madonna's face. And I almost choked to death thanks to the story Mark tells of a song slated to be released later in 2023. So go check out nouveauelectric.com to start picking up the albums that start the 50 years of Mark Bingham project. Follow them on Instagram as well. Follow Mark at MarkBingham_2666. Follow us at Performance ANX on Instagram and Twitter. We're also on Facebook and YouTube, and you can reach out at theperformanceanxietypod@gmail.com or help support the show at ko-fi.com/performanceanxiety or buy merch at performanceanx.threadless.com. And now let's jump right into a discussion about 50 years of Mark Bingham with Louis Michot and Mark Bingham on Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network. Hey, Louis.
Hello. All right. From Mark. How you
guys doing?
Hey.
All right.
All right.
Thank you guys for both coming back. This is going to be fun.
Oh, yeah. We're
back. This will be a bit different from the last time because both times when I had each of you on, we did a pretty deep dive on your careers. I want to focus this more on the upcoming year and all the releases that are going to be coming out. So I want to find out a little bit about how that all came about. So I figure we can start with there, and I can start off by telling everybody that I'm joined by Mark Bingham and Louis Michot, and I have done deep dives on both of you guys. So we are not going to be doing that. I recommend checking out those podcasts because we do we go into great detail on how you got into music and your influences and what it means to you. So we'll be focusing more on the retrospective project that's coming out that's centered around Mark's career. And Louis, and we want to find out how you got involved in this and how you know Mark and how you guys started working together. So why don't we start off with that? How did the two of you meet and start playing and creating music together?
Well, from my memory, I was working on a score for Rodents of Unusual Size, the Nutria documentary.
Right.
And some friends of mine, some friends of mine said, hey, you know Mark Bingham, who lives down in Henderson, he has a recording studio. No, I said, that name sounds familiar, but I don't. And so I called him up. I said, hey, yeah, I'm working on this score, and I'm trying to record it myself, trying to learn how to record, but, I heard you have an awesome studio. We could check it out. And Mark just came over to where I was set up. I was set up in this random room at the brewery in Arnaville, and Mark came and brought me a bunch of things to use. I was like, wow, thanks so much. That's great.
Wow.
And then, of course, got frustrated trying to record myself and not doing a great job. So I ended up just going to Mark's studio and finishing a lot of it. And then next thing you know, Mark actually came and hopped up on stage at the brewery with Michot's Melody Makers, I think later that year. And then that was the end of that.
Oh, wow.
He's been in the band ever since. So
how long has that been?
That was 18 or 18, no?
Oh,
2018?
It's several years.
18, I think, yeah.
All right, so Mark, you're not originally from Louisiana. So how did you, I guess the short version, because the long version is in the podcast we did about a year ago. The short version of how did you end up going from, I believe it was Indiana to Louisiana?
Well, Indiana to New York, and then New York to Louisiana 40 years ago.
Wow.
And it was 40 years ago Halloween, because I left trying to get through the Halloween parade to get off of Manhattan. And it was a funny thing to go through. You know, it was a great way to leave.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I stayed in New York off and on for another 8 years, and then stayed in Louisiana all this time. So it's a hard place to leave.
I can imagine. There's so much there. And you've made quite a career for yourself down there. I've only been to New Orleans a few times, so I can't speak from too much experience, but it seems like a very open and accepting place. And has that been the case for you musically, that it's just, they just kind of accepted you?
No, they didn't accept me at all. I don't think I'm accepted to this day, but it doesn't really matter, because whoever the they is that think, you know, I mean, there were musicians I got along with right away, but as far as the New Orleans, you think of New Orleans music and all that. I don't think I ever had a whole lot to do with it, other than being in the trenches with the musicians, you know.
Wow. Oh man. Okay. As you can tell, I wasn't expecting that. So. Yeah.
Well, you know, it's New Orleans is Scorpio death sect on the Mississippi for 300 years. You can't really candy coat it.
Right.
It's been the most evil place in North America. So there we are.
All right.
Hard to leave, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't let you out. It's a long climb up out of there.
Yeah. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy works. But what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships or at work, not dealing well with the stress. Whatever you need, it's time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles and start feeling better, because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Try doing that in person. So join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself, because you are your greatest asset. And a special offer to Performance Anxiety listeners: you can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/performanceanxiety. That's betterhelp.com/performanceanxiety. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.
At least I got out of the city for a while. But no, you know, New Orleans, I gravitated toward the musicians that I went there to see. I would, you know, to go see James Booker. And I ended up working for the Neville Brothers. And so I went right into the belly of the beast, as it were, in New Orleans. I heard the Dirty Dozen so that I was in that music, but I kind of, for my own stuff, I didn't really have anything to do in New Orleans. I mean, there wasn't much of a scene that would support what I was doing, but, you know, and to this day, really, but that doesn't matter, because, you know, you just do what you do anyway.
Yeah. Forge your own path.
And I guess I could from a bit of an outsider perspective, well, from someone who's not from New Orleans either, who's from Lafayette and goes to New Orleans a lot to perform, and from someone who does kind of fit in the accepted art form genre list of, Louisiana French music.
Right.
I met Mark, I think I was recording, and yeah, because when I said his name sounded familiar so I was like, oh yeah, there's a studio down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess it was 2012 or so, maybe in 2011, Lost Bayou Rams was asked to do a score for a Sylvester Stallone film called Bullet to the Head, and we recorded it at Mark's studio, Piety Street.
Mm-hmm.
And I met Mark briefly because he didn't record it, but he kind of was in there when we got there and said, oh, hey, okay, yeah, cool, well, see y'all later. And then that was the only time I met him until 7 years later.
Okay.
But, from someone from the outside perspective, I think the important thing to recognize about Mark is that he's always been a musician. And I'm still learning, of course. I'm still learning because, he has multi-decades of experience to figure out. But, he's always been a musician, but mostly what he's known as, and he's always done like musical things here and there and with bands and just, I don't know. I mean, he can tell you more, but what he's mostly known as is being a producer and recording engineer, and being so gung-ho as far as like ready for anything, and, just like very, very open-minded and ready to do whatever ideas people have, no matter how far out or whatever, has led him in from what I can tell into a lot of very interesting experiences as far as like recording some of the first, or if not the first, Mardi Gras Indian bands.
Oh, wow.
And recording a lot of early Zydeco, a lot of like dance hall Zydeco stuff, and just probably hundreds of recordings that never even made it out there that are super interesting, and just being the fly on the wall in so many amazing situations, or extremely implicated in crazy situations, and on and on. So it's like he's worked with so many musicians in the span, whether it be as a fellow musician himself or as a recording engineer. And I guess, since we're talking about Mark Bingham's upcoming releases, that his own music has been something that I imagine he's been working on the whole time. And, but while at the same time recording and producing hundreds of albums for other people, and also, like say they all leave and like he's just sitting there still messing with sounds. Well, he might keep working, or so he's been, doing his own musical thing in and out of all these other experiences. Does that sound kind of accurate, Mark?
Yeah, well, yeah, because, I have to, the way you end up being a record producer in the old days, at least, was because you knew how to kind of organize the music in a sense, whether that was arranging it or whether just getting people there on time or figuring out what was a really cool song out of the dozen that you might want to do. So there was something that I just fell into doing. And the first things I started doing were some of my own bands. And I've always been playing through this whole time, some periods way more than others, but I figure, between the late 60s and the mid 70s, I played 1,000 shows,
Wow.
And I was making records during the time. But I mean, I would play 5 nights a week, or 6 nights a week sometimes.
Wow.
4 or 5 sets a night.
Oh my God.
Playing Merle Haggard and George Jones and that kind of stuff. And so, when I went to New York and I had, I don't know, we never talked about this, and I had this job for a minute working for Kiss.
Oh, wow.
And there was a songwriter pool. Everyone would they'd get all these kids that were arguably decent songwriters or whatever, sit them in an office room and give them proper stimulation and say, give us some Kiss tunes, And during that time, the Kiss people decided, they said, this guy's he has two modes. He's either really weird or really country. They weren't up on, and I played an A chord once, like in a position up the neck, and they stopped me and showed me how Kiss played an A chord, which is putting one finger on the top across the second fret. And I was like, okay, I get it. Yeah. So this whole thing of like, it's always, you do this stuff all the time, and basically nobody really understands what the hell you're doing. If people are career driven, they sure don't know what I'm doing. If they're slacks, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm too career driven. So it's always been this thing of, I'm like, it's great. Nobody gets it. The musicians are all mad at you because you're doing this and that and working with all these people. Like, why do you get to do that? And it's just the whole thing of doing 5 different things. It's just it's always been funny.
So your career spans like about 5 decades at this point?
Yeah.
How did this whole retrospective project with Electric Nouveau get started? Whose idea was it?
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, I've had that sitting there. I've had these things, and a lot of these things have been licensed. There's a lot of these records that have been on other labels, and then they were on one thing, they came out limited, and then they got licenses some to Real Music in Japan, and that license went done, and then another one happened. And so one thing was to keep a lot of this music that has been out there for 50 years or 40 years or 30 years or 20 years, whatever, and keep it out there. There's no reason not to, because we I feel like I represent all those people that have done all these things, and their music or their poetry or their novel is sitting in a drawer. Well, my stuff is not going to be sitting in a drawer.
All right.
It's not going to be stuck on the computer for no one to hear. And I think we have to, at every turn, fight against, the main awfulness of the music business isn't horrible, but the whole star system is just completely out of whack. And there's 100 people in Nashville that they could take and make the stars. They could kill all the stars and replace them with these 100 other people, and no one would know the difference.
I'm not going to disagree.
Okay. Well, anyway, and take that in almost any genre. But, so I think keeping things out and doing your work, I mean, after a while, you just, what the hell else what am I going to do? Am I going to retire? I could go work at a pizzeria. I could go hand out snacks at Costco.
I guess so.
I don't know.
Like you said, you didn't write this music and create all this for it to just sit around. Might as well get it out there. Right. The stuff that hasn't been out there, get it back out there. The stuff that's, hasn't been around for a while or very limited. Let's get it out.
Definitely, yeah. That's that's part of the Nouveau Electric mission, is to, there's such a big divide between independent artists and larger artists who have record labels and booking agents and everything. You're either an artist who does every single thing, which don't make me list all the jobs a musician has to do.
Yeah.
Every single one, auto mechanic included. No,
yeah.
On and on. I mean, just however far you want to go, accountant and booking it, and then or you've had somehow have had some success and naturally have gotten to the point where you need managers and bookers and you have a label and all that. So okay, that's good. Mm-hmm. So many, and especially around here in Louisiana, so many amazing artists that have projects that are super interesting, but between performing and trying to pay the bills and everything, just don't really, for one thing, since it's such a niche genre, no matter how big Louisiana music seems sometimes, once you get into the regular unquote world of music, it's like, oh yeah, well that's great when you're in New Orleans or when you laugh at, I don't know how that's going to fly in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And, it's like once you get on stage, it's awesome, but, it's hard to get people behind certain types of genres and such in a larger way. And part of the Nouveau Electric mission is to give a platform to artists so they don't have to do all the things. They don't have to do the publicity and the pressing, and they can continue to focus on the art itself. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I created Nouveau Electric. And as an artist, of course, it's definitely, it's taken my focus away a little bit from my own art, but of course it's part of the ebb and flow of being an artist. Like, it was a great thing during the pandemic when I didn't have any gigs for a while. I could focus on doing this.
Yeah.
And it's allowed me to put out a lot of my own projects that would probably never see the light of day. And just like Mark said, I was just tired of seeing things like, okay, yeah, this is a great thing, but it's just going to sit on someone's computer, and one day it's going to get outdated. We won't even be able to access the file because
Yeah.
So that's exactly why I started the label. And after the last few years of working with Mark, he started showing me some of his different albums. Like, oh, this is cool. Oh, wow, how about this? And then, and then he just kept handing me stuff. And the next thing you know, there's 22 albums stacked up. And okay, let's do it. And so yeah, I get the first. Yeah, I mean, and I'm just kind of sitting here reading Mark's bio as well and trying to continue to learn because we spent a lot of time together. There's a lot to catch up on after 50 years. And I was like, wow, if you moved to New Orleans 40 years ago when I was 3 years old, like, what about the time before that? And since, and so anyway, so the first two, go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say, the problem is, if I was a Louisiana musician, by now you'd know every little thing that I ever did. And I would have told you 20 times.
Oh yeah,
and I would have Grammy winner in front of everything that was written about me.
Yeah,
I don't doubt that.
Different because around here, it's very it's kind of like there's a certain desperation in Louisiana. Like there's there's 10 dogs that haven't eaten for a week. And somebody throws a steak out in the road and counts to 3 and lets the dogs out. That's the Louisiana music scene.
Wow.
I'm not lying. Wow. Not lying. It's a small pool. It's a small pond. It's a small pond with some medium-sized fish, and and it's, well, it is what it is. It's a beautiful thing, and it makes its own beautiful creations. But you can't doubt the fact that it's definitely, it's definitely a small scene with also a limited and becoming more limited number of people who actually understand the lyrics in French and such. And so it's like,
wow.
It's like, if you, like, I always look at, like, say, the Latino music community, like, wow, I wish we had that many language speakers who could understand and be into it. And like, we're just watching the dwindling population of Louisiana French speakers, and same thing in New Orleans, post Katrina. And then as housing prices go up and inflation goes up, it just pushes people to the edge. And then you have someone like Mark, who's kind of seen so much of this come and go, and he's seen Mardi Gras Indian music go from pure street music to a very band-oriented art form. And, same with, like, he's seen Zydeco from the old dance halls, and there's no more dance halls left. So where are people doing it? What are they doing? And it's interesting because I guess on another level, he fits right into Louisiana because the music that Mark makes is its own niche. It's not like, it doesn't really fit like, a certain genre, like, oh yeah, I'm a blank musician.
Right.
He's just a musician with a very diverse, complex set of influences and writing and his own thing, and how many people he's collaborated with and such. So I was going to say the first two albums are coming out November 18th, and Mushroom Crowd and Gooseneck. And I think I'll let Mark talk a bit about them, but that's going to be the beginning, and then we have a whole list going all the way into almost a year from now. September of 2023 will be the last of the 22 albums.
Good grief.
I think that's where it ends, yeah.
So I did get to listen to a bit of this, and Man, you are so right. That description of the music is dead on, especially from Mushroom Crowd. That's an interesting album, man. There's some really different stuff on that. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, good. Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes it takes a while to make music, and you just wait till it feels right. And some of those songs on there, like sometimes it takes 20 years from the gestation of something, you have an idea, until it actually finally gets to be something.
Wow.
And so that a lot of the things, like there's songs on there I started in New Orleans, finished up out here. But yeah, that's I don't know. That record's really grown on me. I don't really sit around and listen to myself, but when that one comes on, I actually like it.
There's so many different things going on in that album.
I love the Panama City song. I just love that. I don't know if anyone else in the world will ever be into it, but
Panama City Beach was a paradise to Vera. The Vera ingenuity, the Vera brain power. Walking on the front beach, sucking on her thumb. What does that tell you when you pretend to be a Christian? What does that tell you when you pretend to be chaste? Spit the coleslaw, spit the coleslaw, spit the coleslaw.
That just cracks me up every time I listen to it, you know.
I did like that.
And I just made that up. Yeah, I mean, that was like entirely sitting there, like it was right when I was going to leave New Orleans, and I was completely miserable. And it was, I think it was the 4th of July. It was some holiday. Now, maybe, I don't know what it was, but I just had to get out of New Orleans. I went to my friend's house in Panama City. I went to a bar, and they had Christian karaoke.
Wow.
And people were getting drunk, singing Amy Grant songs.
Holy.
Oh.
I thought, okay. Well, their kids played in the other room.
That's amazing.
That was like Florida, man.
That is Florida.
I hung out there for 3 or 4 days, but the weirdest part, I was right near the front beach, and there was a biker convention that weekend. So there was 800 Harleys that did nothing but go up and down the road. So instead of being in New Orleans for whatever I was trying to avoid, I got to hear motorcycles revving for 3 days.
Oh.
Perfect. And then right in the middle of that, it was like when I heard like Fifth Ward Weeby had put something out, and it wasn't the famous one that came, but it was something else. And I was like, and he always had that, it was like, you say one line, you say it again, and you play off it. So that was really coming out of that, you know.
Okay.
And I made the track with my son and Anthony Cuccia, and Wes Fontenot was engineer at Street. We just made this loop. And anyway, years later, but anyway, I love the dog song where I found 30 different songs about dogs, and I put one line for each from each song, and hopefully but you know, but it's got a lot of dog songs in there.
Yeah.
Rufus Thomas walked the dog.
Just a walking.
Atomic birds, dominoes.
Besides the cats with
The dog days are over.
hot days in the summertime.
From dog year.
Who let the dogs out?
Wild packs of family dogs.
Mega dogs.
Elvis loved his own shit.
It's a black-eyed dog.
And that's like Zydeco now. That sounds like the Zydeco I listen to now comes from Madagascar. It's in French. It has accordions. It has rub boards. It has little electronics. It sounds more like the Melody Makers than a lot of the stuff any other Zydeco in Louisiana now, or not the another Zydeco, but you know, with the grooves in that direction.
Wow.
The Madagascar music is amazing.
That's amazing.
And you go on Radio Garden, and there's like only a few stations in Madagascar, and they're amazing. I mean, just ridiculously intense music that you don't hear much of in the States anymore at all, that has this kind of intensity to it.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Have you ever thought about CBD and wondered if it's the right choice for you? My wife and I did. For a few years now, she suffered from some chronic pain, and we had discussed trying CBD, but didn't have any idea where or even how to get started. That's why we chose Pure Spectrum. They make the highest quality hemp-derived products and back it up by providing third-party lab tests for every single batch of products right on their website. For my wife, we started with some tincture and isolate, but there's also gummies, topicals, mints, and a lot more. Pure Spectrum not only has CBD products for wellness, they also have CBD for fitness and recovery, and there's even CBD for your pets. And if you're like me and not sure how to start, there's a ton of information on the website and chat options available. So go to purespectrumcbd.com to do your own research, and when you check out, use the code PerformanceANX for 15% off your order. Check them out on Instagram at Pure Spectrum Hemp and subscribe to their email list for sales, new products, and updates. Pure Spectrum, refined phytocannabinoid wellness products for all lifestyles. Hey guys, I want to talk to you about socks for a second. Why not? It's a music podcast. But I tried a pair of socks from Boldfoot and loved them. I've only worn them once because my kids have stolen them. So in my household, that's the best endorsement I can give. And I guess it's fitting because the design I chose was jailbird. The design I chose was jailbird. I might keep that in. The socks are 100% American made, and 5% of all proceeds go to veteran charities. It makes sense, seeing that Boldfoot is a family and veteran-owned company. They have a huge variety of styles. So check out boldfoot.com and buy some of the best socks you've ever slapped on your feet. And help veterans while you're at it. That's boldfoot.com. I also really enjoyed Third Ring, Third Rail, but I also like Theremins, so that...
Yeah, that's like Doc. You said Doc, yeah. Yeah, there's a guy who mostly works on movies, and then he has a studio, and I worked with him like 5 or 6 years on a Peter Stample record, and I gave him some of my stuff, and he was like, oh, it's great. And next thing I knew, he had sent me theremin parts.
Days of happy, days of sweetness, blessings to my human race. Wrap the soul in ecstasy now, burn aside the
So and working, it's funny because I was working with Peter since the 60s, right?
Right.
So okay, I had to look up in BMI today because I had to register more songs. I just wrote a song with somebody. They had to look up my shit. It was like, oh, you have 329 songs, It's like, okay, great. I got 329 songs. This guy, Doc, that played the theremin, well, he says he's there with me and Peter Stample. And Doc is like, man, you got some great stuff. I really love your stuff. And then Peter, we realized that in 40 some years of working with Peter, he's never listened to anything that I did. I played with him. It's all been about him, but he has never once, even my album that he's on, he never even listened to it. That was a great revelation. And this guy who I had just met, who had become like sort of a fan and a collaborator, was looking at Peter like, wait a minute, you're in a band with this guy in the 70s. You've produced all your records and you've never listened to his music? He's like, oh, well, I've
been busy.
Great. It's a great moment in, yeah.
So the whole project is, like Louis, you'd mentioned, it's going to be about a year of releases. It's 22 releases in all. And is it all, how did it get to 22? I guess is my question. Is it because there's so much out there that you've worked on?
Yeah, I think we had to stop somewhere. We had to cut it off. 22 sound like a good number for 2022.
Okay.
No, yeah, you can. I'll let Mark explain because I'm just making things up.
That works for me, though.
I mean, there's definitely more stuff, and like I'm making more stuff like right now.
Wow.
I don't know what's going to happen to that. It might take me 8 years, but this week it was just like when I was a kid. I'm sitting there on the couch. I got paper spread out. I got the computer going. I'm writing, playing. But as far as the other stuff, there's stuff on other labels that are still kicking out there that has been licensed. So, and there's other stuff. I could just keep there could be another 5.
Okay.
But who cares? I mean, what's gonna, this is an amazing amount to do, and it got all the instrumental work that were in everything from commercials to documentaries to films to installations. It got to concert stuff, and it's nice to have that stuff in there.
Oh, yeah.
And there's that I guess it's in March, I think. That's when 11 come out at once. And that's all the instrumental records.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's under one umbrella, which was, Senza Radici Musica Impopolare, which means rootless, unpopular music, which is me all the way. Rootless and unpopular. I'm a root, as Stalin would say, I'm a rootless cosmopolitan. Or as Kyrie Irving would say.
Oh, there you
go. Anyway, yeah. So there, all those instrumental things were good because it was like people sing. I could sing. There's certain things I can sing, but it's not like I'm not like Adele. That's how you pronounce her name, Adele. Everyone pronounced it wrong.
I'm guilty of that one, I guess, then.
Yeah, you and everyone else.
Yeah.
You just didn't tell us. And plus, what I want to know is what happened to Madonna's face? No, go ahead.
Oh,
well,
I just, my wife just showed me a picture of her 2 days ago, and that's exactly what I asked her. So I'm going to be tagging Madonna in all my releases for this, by the way. So.
Okay.
So maybe she'll come on and she can answer what happened to her face. So with 22 releases, were there any surprises or things that you dug up that you'd forgotten about, or any long lost tracks that surprised you?
A lot of stuff. At one point there was a journalist that was in love with me. And he kept showing up at my place and banging on the window at 5 a.m. And I was like, dude, I'm sorry. Ain't gonna work out like that. So then he kept coming, and I said, okay, why don't you sing something? All right, I'll come and sing. So I came to the studio and I gave him a song to sing, which was called Stick 3 Fingers Up My Ass. And
he's just shaking his head.
He sang it. He sang it very well. I forgot about it, and my friend Howard Thompson dug it up from all those years ago, and he was like, "Oh yeah." So anyway, that's on there. That's in the last batch of releases.
I don't see that. In the line. I'm trying to flip these things out.
Yeah, 3 fingers. It's just in the single. It's in the singles thing. And I found another one that I made after the doorman at the Maple Leaf assaulted me because I walked in and stuck my head in to look for my friends, and he came and tackled me and threw me up against a car and started choking me.
Oh my!
Because he thought I was trying to sneak in without paying the cover. So I wrote a nice song about that. That I forgot about.
Oh my God!
Yeah, so as you can hear, I mean, that's part of what music is for. Is to I'm being serious. I'm not trying. I'm like, that's part is to process and give understanding or recorded history and and processing things and what is music for? Is for like processing pain and situations, and it's a way to continue history with it not being so serious, because people don't take music as seriously as they do spoken word. And you could say something like, "Oh, why'd you say that?" You could sing it and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, it sounded great." You could have said took 3 fingers and they don't even realize,
Exactly.
And that was a thing you went through, and I just like the name. And so that's it's quite. I'm sitting here just. I mean, the whole process for me has been trying to keep up with that much material. I listened to him when he gave me each CD. I listen to him one at a time, and then, now that they're all here, I'm just trying to learn. Like read the bio, read the release notes, and wow, there's so much in there. So many musicians and so many situations, and pretty amazing, because it's like, having done music for that long, I mean, it takes courage to put music out, and it takes courage to let your voice be heard. And I think it's a pretty awesome exercise, and let it be. And there's so much, and I'm just scrolling through the album information as we're talking, and wow, it's amazing.
One of the things that I've
just think about. I was just say, the biggest thing for doing this for 50 years is being able to take rejection well.
Yeah.
Do your stuff. Don't take it too seriously. Don't it's like, I started being around rock stars when I was 17, 18. Oh man, just the crash and burns that I've seen. People that like fame and money and getting serious, and then I've watched people have nervous breakdowns. I've watched people just give up. Imagine being like, Sinead O'Connor was right, and everyone vilified her for the last 30 years. Girl was totally on it. They were covering up. So, I mean, you never know. And so what people are willing to do, maintain their fame at your expense sometimes when you work with or for them, it's astounding. So believe me, I have no illusions about what I've seen from people. Oh my God. But it doesn't stop you from doing things anymore. You just like go, okay, there's that.
Bringing that up, one of the things that is amazing to me, especially in this day and age, is the great sense of humor in the music. It takes courage to put out music that's not serious all the time. Well,
yeah, the last 20 years of I don't know, I hate that word, the total absorption and seriousness and all this stuff. I mean, great music come out of there on some levels, but it's also I don't get it. And in the music critic world has always been anti-humor. Very seldom does a Roger Miller slip through. You know what I'm saying? It's so, I get it. It's like that somehow you're, like Peter Stanfill has this amazing record. Now, Peter's obviously an acquired taste, and some people think he's joking when he sings. But, Discogs has his albums down as comedy.
Wow.
That's how far, they don't, and Robert Christgau tries to correct them, and they say, yeah.
Oh, man.
So I don't think any of this, what I'm doing, is overt comedy, but at the same time, because I mean, geez, they didn't vilify Paul McCartney for writing funny songs.
No.
Or John Lennon or Mick Jagger or whoever the hell. There was a point, I don't know when everything turned into that other stuff. It was Ian Curtis, is all his fault.
None of them wrote Three Fingers either, so there's that.
Oh yeah, well.
So
my fingers are intact.
So is there a specific order to the releases? I mean, the first two, like I said, Gooseneck and Mushroom Crowd. Is there a reason those two are first, or is it, did you guys just pick and choose?
Because some guy named Howard said they should go first.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, why not? You got to start somewhere.
Hey, you gotta always listen to
That's
Howard.
the entire process, I think. Louis may know more about that than I do, but
Yeah, I mean, I think
it's like, I don't, yeah, where?
Yeah, I think, trying to intro 22 albums is quite a feat in itself.
Yeah.
And, these, I will say that they all fall in the genre of art damaged country and art damaged rock. Self-titled genre by Mark himself.
I love it.
And then the next two in January of 2023 is William Blake in Bakersfield.
The evening stars begin to glow, birds quiet in the trees. The moon is just a flower sitting high on heaven's knee, smiling on the night in silent delight.
And To and From the Afterlife, which is one of my favorites of the group. And then in March is the 11, for lack of a better word, ambient albums, which are all super cool. And if you think about it, there's like 11 albums that are songwriting and like Mark's music style with other musicians and all that are just completely ambient and vibey. And so, on one side as you have the humor and diversity and avant-garde, obscure, art damaged rock. And then on the other side, you have this very just letting the tones breathe. And like I'm real excited for that too, because I love kind of like ambient music and such.
Yeah.
And there's such a cool collection of them. I mean, there's, how you say Key? Y'all said this earlier. Is it Kai 2011? Key? Mark? K-I?
Key.
Y'all
K-I.
Yeah, Key 2011.
Oh.
Opium Empire, Voss. Yeah, it was 2011 was the year. The Puppet Masters, Blessed Mother, Trees a Cat, Oklahoma Soup Kitchen, Bicycles in the Trees, When Insects Ruled the Earth, Comic Opera, Strings and Sousa, and Sunk. That's 11 rootless, unpopular music. But really, I mean, it's ambient. I love that stuff. And then you have, starting in May, Psalms of Vengeance, I Passed for Human, which is his 1989 kind of most well-known solo album. And then you have in July of 2023, Joy, Unspeakable Joy, and Social Climbers, which is from New York in 79 to 81, right? And then finally in September next year, you have Back to Doghead and the Crisco Mountain Boys.
Oh.
And singles.
Right. And
So
the singles.
That's all 22 of them.
I'm excited for singles.
The singles has some funny stuff in there. I mean, I've had stuff that there's one song on there that people swear I'm like a 65-year-old woman jazz singer, but I was 25 when I did it. It really scares the hell out of people.
Oh, I can't wait.
Like the mutant. Yeah.
So besides the sheer vastness of the music, the amount of music that's coming out, was there any big stumbling block to getting this whole project together and getting it ready for release? Oh, he's laughing.
Well, early on was like just trying to pull it all together and get it all straight and get it all organized so it all sounded right and was levels and all that stuff. But that was months and months, and then after that, trying to get it together on the next level, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah. Now, I was going to say that. I mean, 22. I mean, you said 22 albums. Let's put it into perspective. I mean, and when you work on a 10 song album, that can take someone a year of dedicated mental, close to breakdowns on certain decisions and and so you're talking 22 albums like that. And so for him, Mark just kind of plugged away from my perspective, plugged away and just kind of went through everything and just, do I need something here? And he'd get a certain artist, a drummer, to come in and do multiple kits, multiple takes on different things, and different horn players, and get me, why don't you come throw some fiddle on this? And just, I mean, the amount of musicians on these albums is another thing that could be an interesting list in its own. And so for Mark to complete 22 albums is a feat. And then for, myself and Howard to wrap our mind, that's why I was laughing, to wrap our minds around 22 albums and the amount of, because when I released an album, I'm like, okay, I get into it. I'm like, wow, this is, I really like this track, or, wow, it's really cool how the album works together, and the art. And then 22, I'm just like, okay, how am I supposed to process 22 albums? And luckily between Howard Wolfing and myself and Kirkland Middleton, who was our fellow bandmate in Michot's Melody Makers and works for the label, we were able to kind of get things together. And then Mark was able to give us a rundown of each album. So I'm just, still studying at this point. But luckily we're only going 2 albums at a time. So I can just, now that it's all late, I can just process a little bit. And it's great. It's great that, hey, tomorrow's Friday, and we just put the album up for pre-order on the Bandcamps, and then it comes out in 2 weeks. So it's pretty exciting to finally get to release time.
So with the music, when you gave it to Louis, was it grouped by albums, or were you just giving them tracks and it was up to somebody else to kind of decide what songs went on what album?
No, it was already put together as albums, like the first batch. And I think I remember like 5 years ago giving Louis stuff and listening to it in the Ramblers van on the way to gigs and stuff. That was mostly the ambient kind of stuff. So, okay. I mean, it's not like it's entirely new. There's a lot of stuff's been floating around. And then the CD, like the iPass for Humans, been floating around. We found the label actually sent me back a bunch of copies after 30 years.
It's hanging on to them.
The French label didn't send me back their copies, though.
French.
Big in France for about 20 minutes.
Nice. That's all it takes.
What's the best way for people to find these as they come out? Is there a way to follow the releases, the release dates? Is it through social media, email, newsletters? How can people get this stuff?
That would be the NouveauElectricRecords.com social media, which is basically limited to Instagram, a little bit of Twitter. We vouched to not do Facebook as it's so late in the game and so full of other things. So we have a website, NouveauElectricRecords.com. We also have a Bandcamp, NouveauElectricRecords.bandcamp.com. And we're going to be focusing mostly on Bandcamp. It's such a great, for this series of releases, it's such a great platform to put all of one artist's discography into one place. And it's such a great platform anyway. And so that's what we're doing the pre-order for the first 2 on right now. And yeah, so it's basically Nouveau Electric Records and then various media sites such as your own.
Awesome. Did I miss anything? Is there anything you guys feel we need to add before we wrap this whole thing up? I mean, the 22 albums.
That's a loaded question.
Mark, am I missing anything? Is there anything you wanted to add before we wrap this up for everybody?
Trying to think. I can't think of anything. I'm drawing a blank.
All right. Well, when the ambient albums and the singles album come out, maybe we'll need to have you guys on so you can explain some of this stuff after I hear it.
Yeah, why not?
What the hell?
The Strings and Sousa record, one of my favorites on all this, and it's so intense and over the top. And when I made it, that was 10 years ago, and somebody listened to it and said, I don't think this even qualifies as music. And I felt that was the highest compliment I ever got.
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorites as well. And I don't get the quote, but I do get the pride over the quote. So
But I think John Gross is sousaphone playing, and he's in the Treme brass band, known to be doing this other kind of thing, the real New Orleans thing, which we kind of know how to do, you know. And yet he liked to play. We did this whole sketchy improvised thing, and I love it.
Well, I'm really excited. I've heard the first two. I'm really excited for the next 20. So I'm going to be bugging Howard for every time they come out. Hey, let me listen. I got to hear this. So we'll definitely have you guys back on as we get more releases, and we can talk about some of the interesting tracks that I'm very excited to hear now.
awesome. Yeah, same here. It's we're gonna take it 2 by 2 until we get to the big 11. And no, I'm glad to hear you excited. And yeah, thanks for helping us get the word out about the Mark Bingham anthology, if you will.
The music
anthology.
dump.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah.
I thought you might like that.
Awesome. Well, Gus, thank you again so much.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
My pleasure. We'll talk to you guys
Appreciate it.
soon.